introduce a great friend of our club, John Yates, who will introduce our featured speaker. We all know John, who serves as partner with Morris, Manning & Martin and leads the firm's technology practice. We also know that John is one of our go-to leaders who we frequently turn to whenever we want to create a wonderful program about where the technology industry is headed. Once again, John has done just that today. John, thank you so much for always connecting us with the leaders who are shaping our future and also for asking those great questions that continue to make us think. Welcome.
Catherine, thank you very much. And AJ, thank you for that excellent presentation. Those numbers are phenomenally low, and let's hope that the Rotary Club can help to top those. We've got some important races coming up. I'm going to invite our guest, Jim Robinson, to come up. And as Jim comes up to the stage, let me just mention that Jim is a unique person in the sense that he is one of the most highly respected and regarded investors and financial technology investors, not just in the country, but in the world. And he has his ties back to Atlanta. So when we think about Jim's history, it's very, very unique. Jim is currently the founder and general partner of RRE Ventures out of New York. Jim is someone that for, over 16 years, I believe, Jim was the CEO and chairman of American Express, obviously one of the leading financial technology and financial services companies in the world. And Jim still has some strong roots back here to Georgia. And I believe, Jim, you are also a good Georgia Tech graduate. Is that correct?
Georgia Tech, class of 57. Born here in 1935.
And a Harvard Business School alum, too.
61.
So, Jim, tell us a little bit more about the roots to Atlanta. I want to get into the venture capital side of things, and obviously you're a leader there, but tell us a little bit more about your connections to Atlanta over the years.
Well, I grew up on Tuxedo Road and then West Spaces Ferry. Had a great family, a wonderful life. Buckhead consisted of Wyndham and Roberts on the corner and a small Lowe's Theater, which we watched Hopalong Cassidy and other major films of the time. And it was quite an experience to go from Spaces Ferry Road and Tuxedo up to Buckhead. It's a little bit changed now.
Well, you've also had some interesting board opportunities, and I think many of you may have seen Jim at points in time when he's come to town in the past, but tell us a little bit about some of the boards you've been on as well, because I believe you've had some pretty significant experiences there, too, with Atlanta companies.
Well, I went on the Coca-Cola board in 1975 and stayed for 40 years. So I figured that was a round number, time to get off. In 2015, went through a number of changes during the period of time. But I've been blessed in life. The companies that I've had the pleasure and privilege of working for, from J.P. Morgan to American Express to the Coca-Cola Company, were just wonderful. And it is a world-class distribution machine that has stood the challenge of time and goes on to do even better. So lots of personal experiences around that, and wonderful, wonderful company to be with.
So Jim, I know in the technology area also, when it comes to boards, you've had in the past also served on the board of one of the Atlanta premier fintech companies in Prime Revenue. And PJ, thank you for being here, and Sue McLaughlin as well. I do recall one meeting early on, I think, PJ, when Jim had made an investment through RRE Ventures in Prime Revenue, and Jim was going to be coming into the board meeting. I believe that as I walked into the boardroom, there were certain soft drinks there from a competitive company, and I explained to PJ that I had been in a boardroom before with Jim, and that as he'd walked in and seen this competitive group of drinks, he had explained to us that we needed to remove that poison from the room as soon as possible. So PJ did a good job of making sure to stay with those Coke products. But Prime Revenue is an interesting company, another interesting example of a fintech company that's grown here in town. But Jim, RRE Ventures has focused on a lot of things, but financial technology has been a big part of that. Tell us a little bit about the mission of RRE and sort of what your mantra is when you make investments.
Okay, but let me first comment about the other product. I believe in choice. It was just a lousy choice. You know, we have BitPay, which is an exchange. Prime Revenue, we were in and out, did well. BJ is a great leader. And we got First Performance, which also is a software platform that MasterCard is a major investor in First Data, who we got involved as an investor too. So the game out there today is unlimited in terms of relationships, different performances that a company can have and offer. Catherine, I admire what you've done in raising $125 million as a startup, maybe a little bit more than a startup. But that's what happens out there today. You look for people with passion, hopefully with some domain experience, and the capacity to put together and realize that there's a difference between a feature and a product and a company. And we try to invest in domicile U.S. companies where we can take an active role and help them build.
Well, you've seen a lot of change over the years, Jim. How do you perceive looking for a company? What are the kinds of sort of key criteria you're looking for these change agents in the fintech area? And you mentioned several in Atlanta. Do people view Atlanta favorably in that regard? You're in New York. You're around lots of investors throughout the world. How would you sort of describe the criteria you're looking for, and then how do people view Atlanta with respect to those?
Well, the criteria are you try to look at what the total addressable market is, but you also have to see that the technology is trying to solve a problem. We see a number of companies that, let me show you my wonderful technology. It's AI, it's artificial intelligence, whatever. So what? What problem is it going to solve for Bristol-Myers or Coca-Cola or Georgia Pacific or whoever? So that most of the projections we get, we discount by 50%. Sales cycles are long, especially when you're dealing in the financial services industry, because banks and insurance companies spend a lot, but they take a long time to make decisions. So you just have to, if you're going in with a software as a service model, be prepared to live for an extended runway on whatever you're going to raise. So in the final analysis, we have about a third of our companies come from former CEOs who are ready to take on another assignment. A certain amount from the investment banking community, and a third of it from our own research, trying to spot the new trends that are going to make the difference going forward. We made some dumb decisions. I turned Jack Dorsey down 3 times. He's at Square. He's gone on to do great things there and with Twitter. But, you know, you're lucky sometimes and less lucky other times.
So let's think
let
about
me
it.
answer about Atlanta, because in looking at statistics, New York City, in fact, is number 1 now in number of companies started each year from 2017. Last year, some 2,400. The second is Silicon Valley at about 1,700. Our market share is about 30%. Atlanta's market share is about 5%. That should not be, because you got great talent down here. You got some of the best education institutions in the world, with Georgia Tech, Emory, Georgia State, etc. Great black universities, Spelman. I'm an honorary sister. I got the first award from Spelman that they gave to a man. So I have immense respect for the horsepower down here. You got the water, you got the transportation hub of the whole country. Problem is, Silicon Valley VCs would like to make their bet and then take the team to California. I think that was in the past. It's hard to get someone to move from here to California now. Why do you lose them when they get past a certain point? That's something you need to focus on. And John, I know you and Bill Rogers and others have done that because just daily life around here, other than traffic being too heavy, it's no worse than New York City getting across town. Why would people leave here?
So Jim, let me ask this question. Back when you were in Atlanta, we probably had, 20 different banks? I mean, it was, I remember back in First Atlanta, we remember Bank South. I mean, you could just rattle them off, how many banks we had. And, if someone were to look at it today, they'd say, well, look, Charlotte really, took over that role. Is that something that is an impact on what we're doing here in the fintech area? How does it impact what we're doing, and how should we consider that? Is it a shortcoming on our part? Anything we can do about that, or does it matter when it comes to fintech investing and investing generally?
Probably something of all of the above. The same thing in New York. You can count the number of banks now versus 10 years ago. They've all been consolidated. I was surprised that Truist moved to Charlotte. That's where your major competitor is. Why do you want to try to snatch talent from them and swap it back and forth? But I gather it was a deal breaker, and the combination made so much sense where they were going to spend $1.6 billion to reconfigure the whole IT software technology part of the combined bank and be the number 6 bank in the country. They still are. They still have a major Atlanta presence. I think personally it was unfortunate that they moved headquarters, but it goes with the world of change, and I'm happy to talk about change because it's my favorite subject sometime.
Well, we still got a great presence of Truist here too, and a great ballpark out here where our World Series Braves won. So I think we're making some inroads there. But talk to us a little bit about change, because that's an area that you've really focused on, and you've probably seen more change than most people in this room because of your longevity and your maturity in these areas. I say maturity, by the way. If you read the bio, you'll see that Jim does 500 sit-ups every morning. So does anybody else more than 500? Anybody else do 500 sit-ups every morning? There's no show of hands there, Jim. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, first I want to tell you why you won the World Series. My mother was a die-hard fan forever. I would call on Sunday nights. She died in 2004. She'd say, I can't talk now, call me back later. She'd have her hat on sideways doing the chop. She was up there doing that chop. And it helped you get over the final inning. Congratulations, Atlanta. To me, the exciting thing in life, which is inevitable, is change. Too many people want to keep things the good old-fashioned way. They want stability. The business models and corporations and institutions are set up to preserve and repeat. They talk about innovation, but the silos will often stifle it. To me, change is going to happen. You might as well understand that and get with it and learn to anticipate and be out there in front, or if not in front, shortly thereafter. And that's what I've always enjoyed, focused on. That's why I'm in the early stage venture world. It's as much an avocation as occupation, because it's going to happen, and it happens with increasing frequency today. The code is the law, whether in Bitcoin or in Ethereum. The code is what is happening, and you either meet the code requirements or you don't. Now, it can be hacked if you're stupid enough to leave your ID posted on a sticky somewhere, or just the sophistication of the criminal mind out there today with ransomware, etc. But you can gather, and I know a lot of my friends from Silicon Valley and elsewhere have the attitude, show me a business problem, I don't care what it is, and I can get some black belt engineers, and we can design to improve it or disrupt it. We typically will go more towards improving and enabling and taking them to a next level of achievement, rather than just we're going to blow up the insurance industry. So that's my mantra. I was out at Emory this morning meeting with the new president. I admire his, it's the beginning 2036. Just like Europe 92, you got to set something that is aspirational and then hold to it to get the people and the constituents to contribute to progress rather than just a fight or think that they don't have a deadline to meet. And it's that kind of intellectual leadership that then followed with organization and execution makes a difference. There is no reason Atlanta is only 5% in that Venn diagram that I mentioned where we're number one.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. You mentioned change, and you've alluded to cryptocurrency, blockchain, and the like. I know you and your colleague Jay Haas, Jay, we appreciate you being with us today, have focused a lot in that area. Everybody in this room is aware that cryptocurrency and blockchain are significant. We've had some programs before. Tell us a little bit about how you view that and how important that's going to be to the future of financial technology and financial services.
Okay, well, I'll start with my oldest son, who's my co-founding partner, who about 7 or 8 years ago took better part of a year to get to know what it all meant and to meet the people who were driving the initiatives, whether in Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. So we have the biggest footprint of any VC in early stage companies, some of whom are worth $10, $20 billion now. The power of the mathematics, the blockchain, you can't argue about that. And it's getting better. Ethereum, within the next 9 months, will introduce a big upgrade which will take them to the capacity to deliver 30 transactions per second to 3,000. So all of this is improving day by day. Bitcoin, which has a market cap of about $1.4 trillion, is going to be one of the winners. And Ethereum will be one of the winners. Where the hell Doge and some of those things will be, I have no idea. I leave that for others smarter than me to figure out. But all of the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, you will have companies, Coca-Cola and others, sports figures, celebrities, they will have their own tokens. If the token has a purpose, it will be around. If it doesn't have a purpose, it'll be a flash in the pan. But again, it's simply getting engineers together, and you've got a great source of engineers, 10 minutes from here at Georgia Tech, to participate in all of that growth to create the new either white label for others or consumer-focused initiative that can change the world.
Now, we think also, Jim, about, as you've alluded to Georgia Tech and the fine institutions we have in this city, but you've also pointed out we have 5% of the pie that's really being invested in by venture. I'm wondering how COVID and the pandemic has impacted investing, because we don't have the large number of venture funds here that you have in New York or Boston or California. But does that matter? Is that what we need in order to accelerate that 5%? Or are we in an environment now where that doesn't make that big a difference? You don't even have to met some of these companies in order to invest in them.
Well, I think the age of Zoom and COVID created a new environment where you're not looking in the eye of the person you're about to invest in. Now you've got a hybrid. You can do it through the internet, through Zoom, through FaceTime, etc. But the personal touch is still important, especially if you're going to get involved in trying to help them build. And it's amazing how many problems little companies have that are mirror images of what big companies have. I'll do town halls with some of our CEOs. One of them asked me one day, Mr. Robinson, how do you communicate? How do you really get the message across and get it repeated? I said, how many employees do you have? He said, 5. I said, did you ever try listening? So, you know, life goes on. Human nature is what it is. So you have to break through some of those silos sometime. But it's amazing what can be done, and we're at the inflection. You see Facebook changing its name to Meta. Meta already exists. It's called the internet and the cell phone. Now, it will be souped up by AI and all the kind of variations of artificial intelligence and remote participation. This weekend, I think on the 18th, Justin Bieber is doing a show with one of our companies called Wave, where he will be both avatar and performer. We'll see what the hell it does, but nevertheless, that's what's going to happen. So you can string these things together in an unlimited way, and that's where the creativity comes in, and that's where the challenge to be sure that you're thinking about, is this a fad or is it sustainable? Does it solve a real business problem? Is it by people you can trust?
Okay, so let's talk about fads a second. Some people have said SPACs are fads, these special purpose acquisition companies. You're in New York. There's a lot of activity going on with SPACs right now. You read positive articles, negative articles. You have seen lots of different trends. What's your observation about SPACs, and how's that going to impact, let's say, financial services, financial tech, but just the economy generally?
It will coexist. SPACs were, after all, they've been around 40 years or so. They'd go in and out of favor. This time, they came in with a much louder roar and a much bigger capacity. And if you go back a year, companies were thinking about, do I IPO, and going through the headaches with that? Or it's easier to go with a SPAC, because with a SPAC, I can talk about the future. I can talk about why I think this is a hot vision and I'm going to execute against it. You can't do that with an IPO. So we've got 5 or 6, I forget how many, Jay, companies that have SPAC'd. None of them have had redemptions of the pipes. So most all of them are now trading under their own name. Some trading above the $10, some trading below. But the company put in its pocket $100+ million to help it do whatever it's designed to do. And so it's been a good thing. Can there be fraud of some sort, or she gets bad things? The answer is yes. The sponsors, you want to pick a sponsor who's got some credibility, but they have to negotiate 2 or 3 times. And each time their promote comes down. I was going to do a SPAC with the head of one of the pharma companies 25 years ago, but when I saw the way that the promote was whittled down in the negotiating process, we both decided other things to do. But it is one of the great assets of this country is called Wall Street. The creativity that's there, the capacity to mobilize capital and to create new ways of setting up derivatives, etc. Now, are there extremes? Yes, especially when the SEC decides to take leverage from 10 to 20 to 30. And that's why one of the reasons you had the financial crisis. People forget one key word called liquidity. And if you do that, you better not be wrong. Like Zillow, which was buying inventory of houses based on anticipated market value on flip with artificial intelligence. And it worked until it didn't.
So Jim, let me ask you, there's a lot of folks in the audience that are working with larger companies that are probably listening to this saying, this is great, change is wonderful, innovation's fantastic, but we got a big company and it's really hard for us to energize them. You've been with some big companies, you've been on some boards, you mentioned Bristol-Myers Squibb, you mentioned Coca-Cola, American Express. What are some takeaways folks should be thinking about when it comes to creating innovation and change in a company, really spawning that in a larger company? How do you do that? And, you know, does your fund ever have an interest in businesses that are spun off from the large companies and putting money in companies like that?
It's hard. It's something you have to work at morning and night because everybody wants to talk about innovation. In a big company, every unit, business unit, has its own budget. Yes, if corporate will pay for that, I will be glad to do it. But don't try to squeeze it into my budget. I'm working hard just to keep the railroad running. So you got to watch out for that. You know, Facebook has had the mantra, run fast, break something. Well, the latest polls show that 76% of the people think Facebook is harmful to society. That's an incredible number. I think the mantra should be execute well and run fast. Knowing when to change a winning hand, when to allow competition within the firm to maybe cannibalize traveler's checks. That's a hard decision. Knowing when to change senior management. That's a challenge too. So timing is critical. And as long as you're aware of what the dynamics around the process are that either are supportive of innovation and change or just make the noise, sing the song, and don't do it.
So Jim, let me ask you this question, and we're going to open up the questions from the audience. So if you've got some questions, I think we'll have some folks in the back that can bring a mic to you. But let me ask you this. Many folks here know of people that have new ideas. They come up with a business plan. They probably listen to you talk today, and they think, look, I've got an innovative, change. I've got an innovative company. What's the process to be followed for anybody to come to RRE Ventures, one of the leading venture funds in the country, and get your attention? And what are the right ways and what are the wrong ways to do that?
Well, the right way is to get an introduction from John Yates.
Thank you, Jim.
This was not rehearsed. Someone who's got a business plan and an idea, if they just send it in cold turkey, there's a possibility that it'll be looked at. So it's best if they can get some way of having someone who knows someone say, this is a real interesting startup idea. Georgia Tech has the tech community here. You've got 2 or 3 organizations which support that. You just have to keep doing it and be sure that it is high profile enough where there is a buzz and a drumbeat that talks about it and celebrates the wins. I mean, you had Greg Arnold, who at the OK Cafe would do deals 30 years ago. Problem was they always wanted too high a price in our view, but that's the nature of the beast. By the way, when I said we had the lead share in number of startups in New York versus Silicon Valley will spend about 2.3x in dollars what we do, but they do bigger deals. You got Sequoia, you got Greylock, you got other brand big leaders who have done things here, and have a committee that reaches out and goes and says, you need to spend more time in Atlanta. We're going to at RRE because we like what you're doing down here.
So let's open up the questions. And again, I think we've got Sigurd's got a mic in the back. I think we've got, we're waiting for one. Let me, a question over here. And while we're waiting for that too, Jim, just real quickly, tell us what is that life cycle like when somebody comes to you with an idea? How long does it usually take from the time you get an idea to actually you go through the process and you actually write the check for a successful business?
It varies all over the map. if it really is a hot idea and well packaged and comes in with some sort of recommendations and so forth, it can be quite quick. Because you usually are told, and we're talking to 3 other VCs, and we've got term sheets coming in on Friday. So you have to either accept or discount that, say, if you do, good luck, go take one of them. Or we'll take a quick look and try to give you a reading as to whether we want to take a serious look. A serious look, which basically is checking references, and because we're dealing with the earlier stage, it's not as though they've got an established pattern of revenue with Georgia Pacific or something. You know, I hate to think it takes longer than several weeks, but it can. Or you can, I do less of this than a couple of my younger guys who will go down south of 30th Street until 3 in the morning to figure out what's happening. 11:30 at night, I want to go to bed and say, the hell with it. The sun's going to rise the next day.
You got to do those 500 sit-ups, though, Jim. So
800.
800, excuse me. I think we had a question over here.
Yes, thank you. So obviously you've done incredible things in Atlanta and around the world. And Atlanta's well known, especially in financial technology, in sort of this, this payment space and everything, very, very well known. But it seems to be becoming much more well known now also for life sciences and health technology and these kind of intersections between technology, in particular in matters of health. Just curious what you think about these emerging sectors in health tech and in biotech and the impact that might have on bringing investment to Atlanta.
Okay, well, biotech, even though I've been on Memorial Sloan-Kettering board for 52 years, that's just something different. So we don't do that. We do things that make that facilitate enhancing all of that. So we've got a kind body, a woman by the name of Gina Bartusi. She's raised several $100 million, and what it is think of it being a living room where young women can go and talk about fertility. And one of the end products is freeze your eggs. The mantra is you decide when you want to have kids. That's a big business. We've also got one that deals with health, mental health. The customer is corporations, where we can say, all right, you got your medical plans, your dental plans, etc. But what are you doing with people who have frustration and anxiety in work? Here is a program that is in effect packaged, kind of, whether it's the 12 steps of Alcohol Anonymous, it's a capacity to effectively communicate with others and to be in contact with professionals. So that's another one. Health tech is a major area where the doctors are using it rather than having in-person visits to supplement that with quickies in the middle of the night when they're looking at, you just broke your arm or whatever. So it is a big growth area and one we're spending a lot of time focused on.
So Jim, maybe as a final question, if, and I didn't rehearse this with you, but if you were an entrepreneur starting a business right now, and you're thinking about innovation and change, is there an area that you would really focus on, you would really think about and spend more time in? Because I know a lot of people have young people they're associated with here in the audience. They probably want to know the answer to that question. What would that area be?
Well, my own personal interest is in cybersecurity. And we've got a company called Net Abstraction and Blue Voyant. Because protection of the network and way to scramble the hops where you are harder, the mantra of Net Abstraction is if they can't find you, they can't hack you. And if you're very hard to find, they're going to go chase somebody else who's easier to find. So one of the 20-year leaders of the offensive cyber for the United States started Net Abstraction about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's fascinating because it does focus on the network and protecting the network. There are all other variations that deal with zero-day attacks and embedded software that is a sleeper that will wake up when the whistle goes off and their number is called. So that's out there. And I learned at American Express that the criminal mind is incredibly powerful, and you damn well better be on your game and be able to react quick if you think you got a problem.
Well, Jim, it's good news for Atlanta because we have a lot of cybersecurity companies and entrepreneurs here. So thank you for that insight. Jim, thank you for being and joining us today, and come back and spend more money with us in Atlanta.
Thank you, John. My great pleasure.
Jim, that's such great insights, and we hope you will come back often and visit with us in Atlanta. John, great discussion as always. Please join us again next week for our Thanksgiving Interfaith celebration, and I hope you have a wonderful week in the meantime. Thank you.